The hearing room inside the Capitol that morning felt different, not chaotic, not loud, just heavy, like everyone knew something was going to happen but couldn't name it. Staffers walked a little faster. Reporters whispered instead of talked, and at the center of it all sat Representative Jasmine Crockett, calm, composed, and terrifyingly focused. Across the room, Senator Ted Cruz adjusted his microphone, cleared his throat, and glanced toward the cameras. He always knew where they were. For him, hearings weren't about questions. They were about moments, headlines, viral clips, and today he thought he was going to get one. The hearing was supposed to be a review of voting integrity and federal oversight. Dry by most standards, but with Cruz in the chair and Crockett on the docket, the temperature was already rising. Everyone knew Cruz loved a fight, but what he hadn't calculated, what no one had, was how prepared Jasmine Crockett really was. Cruz opened the exchange with authority. Representative Crockett. He began, voice smooth and deliberate. You've been vocal about election oversight and your concerns with voter suppression, but would you care to explain your support of legislation that actually limits voter ID requirements in your home state? He smiled as he spoke. A smile that wasn't kind, the kind that says, I've got you cornered. Crockett looked up slowly, took a breath, and placed her hand over a thick folder in front of her. Thank you for the question, Senator, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was unshakable. The legislation I supported ensures that voter ID laws are applied equitably, not eliminated. We're not talking about erasing standards. We're talking about creating access. Cruz leaned forward. Access or loopholes? Crockett didn't blink. Access. For the 750,000 Texans who lack a state-issued ID, but are still citizens with the constitutional right to vote. He smirked again. That's a lot of people to excuse from basic verification. Isn't security more important than convenience? Crockett opened her folder. Senator, may I submit these documents for the record? She passed them calmly to the clerk. Inside, data from multiple states showing that voter fraud rates were statistically negligible. Testimonies from rural and minority voters facing barriers. A study commissioned by Cruz's own party admitting that voter ID laws had a disproportionate impact on Black and Latino communities. Cruz glanced at the papers, irritated. And as for security, she continued, if you're so concerned, I have questions about your support for electronic voting machines with proprietary software that experts say are more vulnerable than mail-in ballots. Now the room shifted. Cruz straightened in his chair. We're not here to discuss machines. But we are here to discuss integrity, aren't we? Crockett asked. Or is that only when it fits your narrative? There was a pause. And that pause said everything. Crockett pressed on. She read from the document's cited sources, even quoted Cruz's own speeches. She traced a timeline of statements he'd made over the years, supporting voter access in one context, condemning it in another. She showed receipts, literal ones. You once said, she read aloud, every citizen deserves the right to vote without burdensome barriers. That was in 2013, but in 2021, you called expanded mail-in voting a threat to democracy. Which is it, Senator? Cruz tried to shift. Context matters, Congresswoman, and so does consistency, she replied, which you seem to lack. Laughter bubbled from the press pool. Even some aides at the back cracked smiles. Cruz grew defensive. He turned the conversation to urban ballot harvesting, to illegal immigration, to fraudulent registration. His tone became clipped, less confident. Crockett never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Then he made it personal. You know, he said, some might say your background as a public defender makes you more sympathetic to law breakers than law makers. The room froze. Crockett didn't look shaken. She just leaned in. I'm sympathetic to the Constitution, Senator, and to the people it's supposed to protect. I defended clients who were denied access, misidentified, or treated as guilty before trial. That experience taught me something you clearly missed. The law is not just about order, it's about justice. There was a silence, the kind that settles just before everything tips. Crockett continued, I find it rich that someone who helped fan the flames of January 6th would lecture me on law and order. Gasps. Audible ones. The chair of the committee banged a gavel. Order, they shouted. Cruz looked like he'd been slapped. That's out of line. What's out of line? Crockett said, turning toward him, is pretending to stand for democracy while undermining it whenever it suits you. The gavel hit again, but it didn't matter. The cameras had captured it. The moment had already happened, and no amount of parliamentary procedure could put it back in the box. Crockett closed her folder, looked directly into the camera, and said, "We can't keep pretending this is normal. It's not. People are tired of lies packaged as leadership, and I'm not here to play along." What followed was national shock. The clip went viral in hours, newsrooms ran it non-stop, hashtags trended, supporters flooded Crockett's inbox, even some of Cruz's allies were silent, but she didn't smile, she didn't celebrate, she just went back to work. Because for Jasmine Crockett, truth wasn't a moment, it was a mission, and that day, she reminded the country exactly what that looked like.